Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around for the Q&A of sexual healing. My name is Dominique O'Neill. I'm a programmer at SF DocFest, and I'm delighted to be joined with Elspeth Franja. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Uh,
invitation.
can you tell us a little bit about when you were first connected with Evelyn?
Yes, I can. I connected with Evelyn thanks to Brigitte, who's also in the film. And Brigitte is her daily caretaker. But Brigitte is also a sex carer for some men. And my first idea was to make a film about people who give sex care and some of their clients. So I had conversations with several sex carers like Brigitte. And I had a lovely encounter with her. And then she said, I think you should meet Evelyn, because she was really on the verge of discovering, I think for maybe 30 or 35 years, she closed the door on sexuality and intimacy. And thanks to Brigitte, she was thinking a bit again about this. So at that point, Brigitte said, I think you should meet her. And I had a really great first meeting with Evelyn. And she was so open to it. And I think we really connected very quick and easy. And so in short, it's thanks to Brigitte. And from there on, I met Evelyn, and then we elaborated the idea, because in this first encounter that I had with Evelyn, at the end of the conversation, and she put already a lot of trust in me, and I was very much touched by it too. She said, of course, you don't know yet if you want to film me, because you will also talk with other people. But if you maybe want to film me, how about me going on a discovery, starting from zero, and find out where I'm going? And I was so happy that she proposed it, because of course I was trying to find somebody who would dare to do that. And I was like, no, that's wishful thinking. Nobody's gonna do that because it's so vulnerable. And she proposed that to me. So then I did not really forget my first idea, but I thought, this is so important. I think this is very important and good character. And I chose really to film only Evelyn and of course people around her, but not like 3 sex carers and 3 clients, but focusing on Evelyn, because I think her story, and especially her that she had the courage to do this discovery is so important. And I think in this discovery, a lot of people can recognize themselves thanks to Evelyn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about let's say, so like for example, there's the scene when Evelyn's first experimenting in the tub and Bridget walks out, but the camera stays in the room. Can you talk about like how your decisions were made of what you were going to show versus not show?
Yes. Well, what was also great about Evelyn, that she sometimes really had very good ideas. And for example, visiting the sex shop, she thought, shall we visit the sex shop? So, and when the idea came from her, I think she really believed that it was important to also film it. And it was the same with the bathtub. Of course, she had bought this pink vibrator, and at another time she was lying in bath, and you should imagine that in fact Evelyn is almost never alone, because she's all the time people helping her. And for one moment she was alone, and she thought, but like, when people are alone in the bath, what can they do? And that idea she talked about with me, like, okay, what about if I go alone in bath with the thing I bought? Would that be something? And I was like, yeah, of course, that's a very great idea. And of course, you have to also be very careful, because she's proposing it, but you should also film it with a very not with distance, but we always should take in account that it's very vulnerable, and it's not about film it out in the open. So I am also very glad with the cameraman, Jefrim. He has this understanding of how he can film it. And we spoke a lot about like the gaze of the camera eye, and it should like be stroking her body and stroking with kindness and gentle. And I think also in the bath, he really succeeded very good in it. And I think in a way sometimes we felt awkward to be there, but because Evelyn was so open and she proposed it and she was at ease, we could film it like without any problems, you know.
Hmm. Yeah. And was that the same for that first meeting with Thomas? Because I feel like that also would be a very vulnerable moment to be in the room.
Yes. For us as a crew, it felt less vulnerable, maybe because there was no nudity involved. But of
Hmm.
course, on an emotional level, it's very vulnerable.
Hmm.
But they had such a great click together, Thomas and Evelyn. And Evelyn also, she was a bit naughty girl, very curious. So there was a very light atmosphere and very much this eagerness of wanting to discover and wanting to know Thomas. So in fact, it was a pleasure to be there and a pleasure to be able to film it. And like, you know, this twinkle in the eyes of both Thomas and Evelyn. So yeah, we felt at ease. And sometimes it was like, is she asking this? Or yes, this scene is great. Like she was telling about her sister that she got married and that she wanted to catch the bridal bouquet, and and she fell down. Of course, that's awful, but at the same time, it's such a great scene that she is in the arms of Thomas, and that she's saying, "Well, I don't have the bridal bouquet, but I have now you, you know, yeah, but we're not gonna marry," and it's that's really Evelyn, that she's just, you know, it happens in the moment, and you get some terrific scenes thanks to her. So.
Yeah, she's so great. And she's really lovely. She's it's you really get swept up when she finds the joy and the laughter discovering her sexuality, which is, it's at odds with these other things that she's saying about her body. And I'm wondering if you can talk about, those self perceptions that she has that are
Very
kind of,
tough.
yeah.
Yeah, very difficult. I think it's so deep down in her that she will never get rid of it in a way, even though she, thanks to the process of the film and thanks to once the film also got premiered and went to festivals and sometimes she was invited. Of course, it's very good for her ego, in a really positive
Hmm.
way, for her self-esteem. She's really growing in it. And I think that's the main thing for her, for the process, that she got the chance to see her in a different way, in a more kind way. But of course, these, like, the thought of rejection in herself, but also build up, affected by the context she grew up in, like parents and sisters and people around her. Even people that care for her but put on gloves to touch her, you know, all this. I don't think we can imagine how much it is a burden on to how you look towards yourself.
Hmm.
That's, I think that's will stay tough in her life, even though sometimes there's, you know, she's going upwards. And but I think the rejection is so deep, especially I'm very much not, it's even more than being touched, it's like moved deeply, the scene when she's caressing the horse and she's talking about how she was born and what people already told her, you know. Imagine you're a baby of, I don't know, 2 days, 8 days, a month. I believe you really incarnate these deep feelings of rejection, you know, and how can you resolve this during your life? And I think really she's doing very well, but at the same time, I don't think it will ever leave her for real. Yeah, that's a pity.
Yeah. It is, but yeah, and in some ways, it's no different than growing up with other societal pressures that we have,
Hmm.
whether or not you're disabled, and
I don't think it has to do with her disability. Of course,
Mhm.
there's a it's one of the reasons why her parents raised her as she was raised. But I think that's why her story is so relatable to a lot of people,
Right.
able or disabled, or
Hmm.
just human beings. And I think that's the main thing about this film. It's not about her disability or about her sexuality, intimacy. It's really about are you being seen? Are you being recognized and valued as a human being? That's, for me, it's the core of the film.
Yeah, yeah. Can you talk more about, you mentioned this earlier, but just keeping this like tight view of her in the camera, and just like that intimacy and of how you filmed it, and like maybe talk about like the camera that you placed on her wheelchair, and some of those decisions.
Hmm. Hmm. I spoke with Jeffrey, the cameraman, about this in a very early stage. One thing was about how the camera could stroke her or caress her, and the other thing
Hmm.
we spoke about was also we wanted to be at her eye level, because when we put on, we also, as not non-disabled people, it's hard thing, I think, to imagine how you see the world. You're like at a lower level, so we really want to be at her level. And that's why we mounted one of the cameras. We had two cameras. It's what's called the wheel cam. Okay, now we do the wheel cam again. It was a big technical operation, and he really had fabricated something for it. And Evelyn also excuse me, Evelyn also enjoyed these camera takes, because she was like moving around in the city with with the camera on her. And sometimes we said, okay, Evelyn, because she has tendency to do like this when she's alone. She's like going down with her body. So we're like, okay, we do the wheelchair cam, and don't forget to smile sometimes, or like, cheering up. It's so we have really different takes. Like sometimes she's like grumpy, and then she watched the footage again. She was like, "Am I looking like that?" And yes, Evelyn, you can look grumpy too. But the main decision was to be at her level, and um, yeah, I think that's important. It's also a way of recognition, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, just for context, for somebody who might not have familiarity with the organization that she contacted, can you share a little bit about what kind of work they do?
You mean like the mediation person more? Does she has the like the video call with, and she's visiting the Evelyn to explain how she works, or you mean like Thomas?
The Like Thomas, yeah.
Okay, so like the sex
Sorry.
care person.
Yes. Yes.
And what's your question?
Well, my question is, I'm just wondering for context, you know, I don't think we have a lot of familiarity with that kind of service. I'm just wondering if you can give like a brief contextualization of what that service is, and if they
Okay,
operate
yeah,
primarily.
with disabled people, or
um
no, I
no,
get
not necessarily with it.
no, I get what you mean. At first I thought you said context, but it's context. It's context. So I
Context.
understand now. Um, well, sex care, and I really emphasize on the word care, because I think it's different than sex work, even though there are some similarities. Um, but there are people that really uh, have intimacy on all kind of levels with people that have difficulties in experiencing it themselves. So sometimes it's elderly people, sometimes it's people who are like with neurodiversion, or really more physical disability, and have this desire to experience it also. And so you can go to these services like organizations. They work with sex scare, and I always advise people to go also to an organization, because it's so vulnerable. It's important to have this more like a mediator in between that can advise you. Okay, you can choose for this sex scare person or this one. That's why also Evelyn invites this woman, and she gets this advice, or like more intake conversation. And I know it's in Holland, I think we have like 4 or 5 organizations, which still is not a lot. Even though we're a small country, it's not a lot of people who are doing this. And it's especially very difficult for women. I think it's more accepted for men to have this like need, even though of course it's the same for men and women, but it's more accepted that, of course, oh yeah, you are a man, yeah, you should maybe get some help. So there are a lot of sex care who are women, but less men, or really, like the good one. Because I also spoke with the organization. She says, of course, I can get a lot of men who want to do it, but what's their motive? It should be very genuine, of course. And Thomas, he also works in Germany. In Germany, it's also very well organized, and in Belgium, as far as I know. In Israel, it's also, and I think in Austria, I think that's the 4 countries where it's accepted and legal. Yeah. I don't know if it's answering a bit your question, or.
I think that's perfect. I think that's perfect.
Okay.
And one last question, which is that sexual intimacy, sex in general, can be a difficult subject to talk about. So just out of curiosity, what's it like working on this story and sharing it with the people in your life, and spending so much of your time and energy on a film that focuses on sexual pleasure and intimacy? Can you talk about that?
Yes, of course. I think it was kind of natural, and my first starting point was that I wanted to make a film about this taboo, which I believe should not be a taboo. I think it always also says something about me, how I'm looking towards the subject, of course, that I find it important, and I think it's not a taboo. It should be very easy and normal for people to be able to experience it if it's a problem for themselves. And when I spoke about it, of course, people are asking, oh, you're a documentary filmmaker, what's your new film? Then you ask, you tell about the subject. Most of them were like really curious. Oh, I didn't know it exists, and what does it mean? Oh, that's important, and great. So a lot of people were very positive in their reactions, and I didn't find it hard to talk about it. I think maybe it's also because the way I brought the subject, like it's a perfectly normal subject to talk about. Let's talk about it. People are less feel less awkward to talk about it, I think. And that's also what I experienced with the film. A lot of men tell me this. When they start watching the film, they're like, oh my, do I feel comfortable with this? What I'm going to see, And I think after 7 minutes or so, they're like, oh okay, yeah, I can watch. It's okay. It's not, and then they float on the film, and they're perfectly okay with it. Yeah, so in short, for me, it was not difficult and didn't feel awkward. And I think it has a lot to do with the way I brought the subject, maybe. So people don't feel like, oh, sorry, wait, what, sexuality? No, it's not. Then it's easier. And it's also Evelyn, so it's like, I don't know if you say that in English, but like open door, bam, she's talking about this, and it's okay, Which doesn't mean it's not difficult, but it's also the way she's like breaking the ice on a difficult subject. So yeah. we owe a lot,
Yeah.
I think, to Evelyn.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I appreciate both of your openness in telling the story and sharing it with San Francisco. So thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, I'm really glad that I can show it also in San Francisco. Yeah, at the audience. Thank you.
Thanks.